Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever cross-functional meeting of the volunteer community and the educator community. This is such an exciting experience because we get to see and learn and sit at the feet of the experts in our volunteer community. And today we have April Forward and Bob Anderson. And this is really special event because it is Volunteer Appreciation Month. And as everybody in this group knows, we could not be anywhere without our volunteer team. They are the heart and the soul, the bread and the butter of everything that we do. And we're just so thankful for them. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about April and Bob, and then I am going to let Bob share some stories, give you some entertainment, and and then he's going to let April talk, and then we're going to truly open it up for Q&A. So think about your burning questions that you have, everything that you want to know, from what it takes to produce audiobooks, to what it's like to actually to narrate a book, to any other questions that you have. So get the wheels turning and start thinking, and here we go. So we have Miss April Forwood with us today, and April is a Connecticut and Arizona native. She holds a master's degree in international management and has worked diligently in her career in corporate banking, international investment banking, and international relations. She has 4 kids and she's had a host of international moves. She left her career and devoted her free time to community service, especially in areas of women, children, education. She began volunteering with Learning Ally in May of 2020 while based in Buenos Aires. And she's narrated approximately 150 titles of all genres and all age groups and all bands. April speaks Spanish fluently, and she's really enjoyed bringing to voice not only some of the most powerful and current Latinx titles, but also so many beautiful stories for all ages that both educate and entertain. She is especially driven in her work with the focus on helping every student have the tools to build confidence to achieve his or their potential. And we are featuring several of April's narrated titles. One is Ephraim Divided, one is All of the Impossible Things, and another one is Leo the Lightning Bug. And next we have Bob Anderson. Bob brings a background of theater, radio, and television, recording studio and audiobook production to his more than 15 years of volunteer service for Learning Ally. During this period of time, Bob has logged more than 3,200 hours as a narrator and checker. Bob currently resides in Austin, Texas, when he's not relaxing somewhere on the beach.
Right.
3 featured titles for Bob is the first one is The Glass Menagerie. The second is Julius Caesar, and another is News of the World, a novel. So with that, I will go ahead and kick it off to Bob.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and hello to everybody, and hello to my friend April. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. As was mentioned, I've been volunteering with Learning Ally for about 15 years. I don't have any idea how many books I've narrated, how many books I've listened to it. I do it because my wife was a teacher of young children for 45 years. My daughter and my daughter-in-law are teachers, and I know firsthand from their experience what you also know, and that is that access to books is fundamental to a child's ability to succeed in school and beyond. When I tell people that I read books for Learning Ally, it's fairly common for them to think that I sit down with a physical book in a recording studio, and after reading the book, it is available in a catalog. And that's pretty close to the way we used to do it. I'm old enough to have recorded books on cassettes. You do remember cassettes, don't you? Never mind. Today, the recording studio is in our home, and the books that we read are digital, and the recording is digital, captured by software running on our home computers. But long before we see a book show up on our computers, it has gone through a number of steps to get to that point. And after we read and proof the book, there are even more steps before it shows up in the catalog. So let me share a quick version of what the steps are today to get a book produced. I'm most familiar with our voice text production track. There are different tracks, and depending on the type of the book, voice text can best be described as a cross between an e-book and an audio book, and I think most of you are familiar with this type of book. We get asked a lot how books get chosen, and that's not my field of expertise, but I do know there are a lot of factors at play, most notably member-based demand, but also popularity, publisher websites, book review and awards websites, follow-ons in a popular series, just to state a few criteria. And after being selected, the book starts the pre-production process. Some of our books start with a unique and interesting step we call chop and scan, and that's exactly what it sounds like. The spine of the book is chopped off. Actually, it's a big paper cutter. And then the loose pages are scanned into files, and they go through a process that divides the text into the chapters and formats the text if needed. And then those chapter files are uploaded into an online portal, a private website, if you will, along with a lot of supporting information and instructions. And the portal is where the project becomes available to everyone assigned to work on the book. Now, concurrent with these early steps, and sometimes even before, the book is cast, assigned to a narrator based on the type of book and the voice requirements for that particular project. So now we have a narrator, and we are at that point where someone actually sits down and starts recording. Now, you remember that part about the studio being in our homes and that we record on our home computers? You have no idea how many studios are the coat closet with a bunch of moving blankets spread over the reader because neighbors mow lawns and dogs bark and air conditioners run, and don't even get me started on leaf blowers. And there's a whole lot of complicated stuff that comes into play here about recording software and microphones and interfaces and file types and decibel levels and room tone, and we're just going to skip right on past that and go to the checker or the listener. And that's the person who listens to every spoken word, again on our home computers, following along in the text to catch errors. And there are always errors. As a narrator, let me just say that this is a very humbling process. Learning Ally is adopting some state-of-the-art technology to facilitate this process, but every book is listened to multiple times in the reading, checking, production process. We listen for omissions, for extra words, missing phrases, flubs, distortion, noises, consistency of character voices, mouth clicks, stomachs growling. Oh yeah, that's a big problem with narrators. All these and more are marked in the software, and the narrator re-records those parts, and they're merged back into the narrative and listened to again. At this point, it gets technical again. Volunteer audio editors often do some cleanup and some necessary tweaking. They might snip out a noise, for example, or tighten up a pause. And then Learning Ally's audio engineer takes over and puts all of the recorded files through some very sophisticated software to ensure good, constant audio quality. And then comes the build process, and that's more technical manipulation, but the most important of this process is syncing the audio to the text at the sentence level. And of course, then releasing the book into the catalog where it's available to students. How long does this take? A whole lot longer than we'd like it to. First and foremost, there is the volunteer aspect. Life happens, schedules get revised. And for every hour of narration, industry suggests 2.5 to 3 hours of actual narration for the finished hour. You have to take breaks, you have to back up, you make corrections, you listen to the narration, and that's just the narrator. The listener has their own set of problems. And I'm going to turn it over to April, who does know how many books she's recorded, and tell you a little bit about the narration process. But I have to share a story with you. I was assigned, I later found out, April's second book to listen to, and I went to the portal and I started listening, and I thought, oh, we've got a significant problem here. I'm not sure I'm going to know how to tell this narrator that there are some things that may have to be redone. So I messaged April and I said, we can do better on some of these sections. We may have to re-record some. And she immediately texted me back and says, no, let's record them all, re-record them all. And I said, well, no, we can work with some. No, let's re-record them all. And she did record almost, she was well into the book before I got to this. And we talked back and forth and messaged back and forth about the pros and cons of this and what we found here and it's just an example of what the volunteers go through, the narrators and the listeners go through whenever they're working on a project. It's not antiseptic. It's gritty, and we hope the finished product is good. April?
Well, goodness, Bob, thank you. You explained everything so well. And I learned from you today, like I learned from you on that second book 2 years ago. Bob was so kind, so it made it sound terrible that I had to redo all of that. And it wasn't. It was a great learning experience. And Bob hand-holded me through the entire process. And even afterwards, when I kindly asked him to give me as much feedback as he could in terms of how to improve and areas that I can do differently and better, and he wrote up a big long write-up, and I have it in my brain with me to this day on every book that I do. So you're amazing. You've really taught me a lot, Bob. So thank you for that. Hi, everybody. We're really honored, both of us, I know Bob as well, to be here today with you all. And we were asked to start off a little bit of our why. I have 3 whys. One is that growing up, we didn't have much money, and our summer the exciting thing was to start the first day of summer by going to the library. And I traveled everywhere and experienced all kinds of things through stories. And I cannot imagine not having been able to do that. And it's important to me that every child can. Number 2, I have one of my 4 children has some ADD issues. So I certainly understand the pain and heartache and struggle of a child as they are learning how to deal with their challenges. And as a parent, as the child themselves, or even for all of you who are helping shepherd these children through the educational process, I just want to be there to be able to help give tools to make that happen, so that confidence is bolstered and children can reach their potential. And I guess my final 3rd one is that I love storytelling, and I discovered Learning Ally when COVID hit, and we all thought it was a temporary thing. And I am going to stop my community service, and I'm going to do this for a bit. Little did I know that I found one of my callings. Something I really, really love, creating characters and bringing stories to life with reaching out and helping children in education. So it's been my COVID blessing. What do I do as the narrator? Well, when I started, initially, the way that Learning Ally worked 2 years ago was that most of the opportunities to narrate were put out onto our website, and you, after you'd passed the narrator training course online and submitted a sample of your work to be approved, then you were able to apply for books. And I figured, okay, I bought a microphone. I guess I'm going to be able to do this. They assured me I would. So I bought the microphone. I figured out the software more or less, and I'm not very technical. And I got on there and I chose a book that was a little story about UFOs. It was a no character nonfiction children's chapter book, making it as simple as possible. I got through it. It was fine. And on my second book, I tried out, and my producer, who is amazing and who has a great, vast experience within the audiobook community and in audiobook production, we have three tremendous producers on board that help put together all these projects and cast them. And he said, great audition, but you're not the authentic voice we're looking for this. And he threw at me Ruta Sepetty's Fountains of Silence, which is the book that Bob mentioned that we wound up working on together, which had no fewer than 15 main characters. So in Texan and in Spaniard Spanish. And so talk about an organization that believes in us even before we believe in ourselves. I am incredibly grateful to Learning Ally to keep upping the bar for me all the time and challenging me to try. And that was a wonderful book. And since then, have done the full range, as the bio said. Bob and I worked on a bunch of them together last May when we were pushing for everybody's summer reading requests, especially the children's picture books. And we were whipping those out one after the other. And that was a lot of fun. And I've been everything from every type of animal and insect to inanimate objects like boxes of crayons in the wind. They've all been a challenge. They've all been fun. I don't know where these voices come from, but honestly, I drive down the street and I'm sure everybody thinks that I am on a hands-free and I'm just voicing different characters. So that gets me back to today. Lately, the last 6 months to 9 months have been primarily middle grade novels, as well as teen and young adult. Been really enjoying them. I think there's so many heartfelt stories that help build empathy out there, which means a lot to me to be able to get those books out. And I receive a book directly now. I don't have to do that audition process anymore, thankfully, but I get the books directly from my producer. And when I am ready to start narrating, after fully reading through the book, listening to the characters, looking up, there are actually words, and Bob, you might laugh at this, because there are actually words
yes.
that we think we know, and that we read it and we go, yeah, I know that, but you've actually never heard it said, because there are a lot of words out. And Bob and I did a beautiful, well, it's strange, but I enjoy doing it a lot, Bob. We did Karen Russell's short stories, the girls by St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves. Yeah. And there were some odd words in there, and Bob searched them all up. So when I get back corrections from my listener, they often have that tag, Merriam-Webster, listen to how this word is supposed to be pronounced. So now, Bob, I actually look at all that stuff before, if I have even the slightest doubt. So anyway, that's the process. Like Bob explained, it's definitely a huge team process. Just was working, I see Nava Feingold is on here, and Nava is our be all and end all in terms of making everything sound amazing when we're all done with our part. And she and I were working to tweak my home office settings yesterday, because I'm finishing up the inheritance games and getting ready to do the Hive, which someone has asked for, or people have asked for, and I'm looking forward to that. And we wanted to make sure that we just keep upping our game so that everybody is loving reading. And with that, I guess that's it. I did it, I think. We'll turn it over for questions with you, Elizabeth.
Yes, thank you both, Bob and April, so much for sharing your stories and for telling us about your characters. 15 characters, April, in one book. I cannot even imagine what that's like to sit and do that. So thank you for giving us just a little window into what your experiences are like. I know so often we see the final product, but we don't get a chance to see the people behind the books. And so I'm so thankful for this opportunity that you both have given to us and the educator community as well to kind of take a peek into that window. And with that, go ahead and put your burning questions in the chat and let's see what we have. So my first question, April, I'm going to go ahead and kick this off while everybody's thinking of their questions, is what was it like to narrate for 15 different characters in one book?
Well, I've learned some techniques. I record them all on the phone, but I think more than anything, it's really just getting each character in my head as a real person and becoming them. And so I read a lot about ways to do this before I started that book. And, there's everything from trying to imagine a person that you've watched on TV that might have spoken like that, and then you associate them in your head. But lots of tricks of the trade. I've adapted mine, but fun. And then just ensuring that when the character doesn't appear for a long time that you've not forgotten them. So that's when I use my iPhone and record them. So I'm sure that they're consistent throughout the book.
If I can speak to this as well, am I muted?
No,
you can hear me. If I can speak to this as well, there is a tremendous amount of pre-prep work that go into the longer books. How to pronounce names and places. Is this Houston, Texas? Is this Houston Street in New York City? There are geographic locations that you have to look, and the characters. If it's a long book, you may have a character at the beginning and you may have a character at the end, and you better have something like April does to record how you recorded that character 3 weeks ago, so that you can do it again when you get down toward the end of the book. A whole lot of pre-prep goes into this, and non-fiction books are the worst. Sometimes you can actually find. I did several books on space flight and the Apollo series, and most of those people are. You can find them on YouTube. You can listen to how they talk. Some of them have that Texas drawl because they were Houston based, and some of them were Yankees, and I can't even begin to do Yankee, but you can hear them on YouTube, and so you listen, and this is all those things that add to how long it takes to produce this book.
Perfect, Bob. Thanks so much, April and Bob, for sharing that. Two people have a similar question, and that is, how do you keep each character's characteristics individual when you're tasked with so many different people in the book?
It's a good question. I think it really depends on the narrator. I know that in the industry, a lot of times it's just little tweaks and they don't go out there. I really like to make them very individual. The Inheritance Games, which I'm doing right now, has 4 teenage Texan sons, 16, 17, 18, and 19, or something like that, a little older, but in that range. And I really wanted to make them all be different. And so, it's just saying, okay, based on everything that I have learned about this character is going to be a little bit slower in his drawl, and the next one is going to be a little bit more hyper, and the other one's kind of the love interest. So there's 2 of them that are love interests, and they're got a different kind of sexy to them, I guess, if you will. This is a teen novel, young adult. So yeah, I think it is, as Bob said, a lot of thought, a lot of prep work. If the book is very complicated or out there, my only never do is I never go in and listen to the Audible version. I really want this book to speak through me as an authentic narrator. But I definitely do listen to interviews with the author or other things that I can find out there about the book, just to give it a little bit more color or flavor, whether it's Goodreads, what are these characters like, just to see if there's something I might have missed that somebody else picked up on.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, April. Bob, do you have anything that you would like to add there? Or,
Just to mention that we are enlisting volunteers to do a lot of this pre-prep work, to check out pronunciations and to look up dictionary words and put that all in a format that the reader, the narrator, has access to and is able to quickly check some of these things. And they do this in the early stages of production, so that by the time it gets to the narrator, there's a whole lot less time spent going through that part of it. So there's another volunteer opportunity for folks to look up how you pronounce words in books.
Sounds like a wonderful opportunity. There's a question here, and the question is, have you narrated a book recently that you really enjoyed that kind of took you by surprise?
I have one. I don't read eerie, creepy books usually. That's not my genre. And I did Kate Alice Marshall's Rules for Vanishing, which is a teen novel recently. And I loved doing that. It completely, along the lines of the book Bob and I did together, the Karen Russell St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves. Both of those were places I wouldn't have gone on my own, that Learning Ally took me, and they were thrilling to narrate.
Well, let me tell you, in my 15 years, I have recorded diesel engine repair manuals. I have recorded a lot of children's books. I have recorded many, many textbooks for the state of Texas. Thank you, Cherie. And but I guess the book, well, it became my favorite book to narrate, and that was the News of the World. I'm not much of a movie goer. I saw that Tom Hanks was in this movie, and but I didn't pay much attention to that. But it turned into a wonderful, wonderful experience. Probably the peak of my narration for Learning Ally. I'm probably not going to get a better book than that. But you know, if you want to send me another one, that would be okay.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for sharing that. I have not heard your version, but I share with you the love of the story, that if you haven't seen the movie or read the book.
I later met the author, Jill. It slips my mind now. She lives just the other side of San Antonio, and came to a book festival in Austin, and I was at the book festival, and I met her. This was before I had finished the book even, so it was interesting to talk to her.
Amazing. All right, we have a question here, and it's more about your setup. So what does your setup look like? What does it entail? Do you have to buy a microphone? Where do you record? Is there anything that you've learned over the years that works or doesn't work? Share with us your secrets.
I have a fairly well-equipped recording studio, but I have also done some commercial audio books over the years. It is not a soundproof room. It is a sound conditioned room. But if I could turn my camera around, you would see that I have 3 monitors in front of me here. I have 2 computers, an iPad, all the gadgets. Probably the most important thing is getting in a space that's quiet. And I talked about people climbing in their closets, and that's literally true. They will burrow down, take their laptop and burrow down into the closets because of the outside noises. And the microphones themselves, you can spend as much money on a microphone as you have. The recording software you can get for free. Interestingly, Audacity is a perfectly good recording software, and a lot of people use it. A quiet room, a quiet space, wherever that is, reasonably decent equipment, not your laptop speaker, not your laptop microphone, I should say. You really need something a little bit better than that. But it doesn't take a huge investment. There are some perfectly decent microphones on the market for $75 to $150, and they will do just fine.
Thank you for sharing that. April, any tips or tricks or secrets over the years?
Well, ask Nava that. We had a big, long session yesterday about how to improve my workspace, just because I am constantly listening to audiobooks out there and trying to improve my game as a narrator. Learning Ally is always working to improve the quality of everything we do. And she was on with me, kindly helping me see how to step up my setup as well. So everything Bob said goes.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about that. I have a question in the chat, and I'm gonna ask Andrea to come on and share her question, because there's a couple components to that question, and I just want to make sure I capture all of it.
The one about the script?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering, because when you're reading a novel in the novel form, it's just a new paragraph for each speaker. It's not always clear. And so what you read from, is it formatted with the character's name on it, like a play script, so you can tell?
How great that you asked that question. I actually had the opportunity to visit with the person in charge of Learning Ally and students at our school, my kids' school. And she's like, oh, can I just see what it looks like? So I turned my computer on and I showed her, we use, except for those that use Audacity and download their books, we use a system called Easy Books. And what it does is by chapter by chapter, typically you'll see on the screen the entire chapter just actually scanned from the book. So it's not character by character. I'm reading the novel as if it's the novel or the short story or whatever it is. And then I'm seeing the waveform across the top. So I'm able to follow what I'm doing, and I can stop, I can go back, redo, re-say something. When I record, I definitely not only, and this was a Bob tip, I go through all the way, Bob, and I do my chapter, and then I go back and I sit and I re-listen, not only because I know somebody's coming behind me to double check that the voice is matching the text exactly, but also that I've gotten that character exactly the way I wanted him or her or them, and that I've had the timing and the tone and the building up of the mystery or whatever's going on there exactly the way I want it. And then it gets submitted. So it's all on the screen, and we can go back before once somebody's reviewed it, we really don't go back into it. But before you submit to your listener, you can go back and save them for a while. I want to make sure, I sometimes do that at the beginning of my books. So maybe 5 chapters, small, if they're small, and I go through and I just want to make sure that these characters are exactly how I want them to be. And then I'm ready to go forward. And then
it doesn't tag you on who the character is. You just have to.
It does not, and sometimes that's an issue. We don't know who spoke that sentence, and the narrator and the listener will have a dialogue back and forth, and they'll say, well, it sounds like it was what she said. No, I think it's what he said. Well, let's try it your way and see what it sounds like. Sometimes we don't know. We just flat don't know. But we try to work out through dialogue how we think that ought to be read.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for answering that and explaining that for us. We have a question. Has volunteering with Learning Ally impacted you on a personal level?
Yes. Yes. My family does not want to hear about it because it's all I can talk about. I love what I do. I do it for hours and hours and hours a day and often into the night. And I guess the biggest takeaway that I've had from it is I put up a lot of, I can't possibly do this. This is something that, trained voice actors do. I technologically, I can't. So I think maybe just even for my kids, for the kids you work with, the concept of don't ever say you can't. For me, it has opened a door, and I've had the courage, thankfully, to go through it. And I'm in a place today where this is one of the great joys in my life, being able to give back through Learning Ally. And I just think it's a fantastic, fantastic organization. And what we do in the mission is something I fully buy in on. So it's changed me. It changes me every day with every book and with every encounter with my team.
Wonderful. Thank you, April. And Bob?
Yes, some of you in the Learning Ally organization already know that after I retired, my wife was very diligent about making sure I kept my appointments to go to the studio and record and get out of the house. She a voracious reader and really supported what I did, but having a little peace and quiet. I used to go a couple of times a week to an actual studio here in Austin, and then we moved to the distributed home recording method. And she made sure that the room was soundproof, so outside noises couldn't get in and inside noises couldn't get out. And that made her very happy. So yes, it has worked well in my family.
Thank you for sharing that, Bob. Thank you for sharing, April. Shelley, you had a question about how many hours per month or per year. Do you want to come on and go ahead and ask your question about that?
Sure. And I am so interested in this subject today. Quick sidebar. I'd love to hear a producer's perspective on finding and assigning narrators and their process too for a future talk idea. But just out of curiosity, everybody has different experiences and life stages. I was curious how many hours per week one might do this. Are you looking at 5? Are you looking at 2? Are you looking at 20? And I know it's going to vary, but just curious to hear about that journey.
I think it depends on what you want to do and how active you want to be. I recruited somebody who works on trailers, and she does that. And there are specific jobs that she's got that are from moment to moment, but she wanted a steady flow of a certain number of hours a week. If you're narrating, I can only speak to that on my side because other jobs I don't know, but it depends on what you want to put in. The books have a deadline, and we try to fit within that deadline. I'm an overachiever, so I do them really, really fast. So I'm typically doing these young adult novels in 7 to 10 days max, and then they're listened to, and I have a listener behind me working with me every moment, every step of the way, and then they're off and ready to be done. So it's a lot of hours. I'm around 100 a month, but it just depends on what you want to do.
And
exactly. Right now, I'm doing more listening and proofing than I am narrating, and I can stay up with several narrators because I don't have to stop and change and correct and look up words. And so, well, I do have to look up some words, but generally it's a faster track to do that. But the answer to the question is, you can spend as much time as you want doing this. I typically work 2 to 3 hours a day on Learning Ally projects, and I'm happy to do it.
thank you so much, Bob and April. Just a quick note for everybody here. Eleanor put in the chat the exact number of hours. Bob has over 3,200 volunteer hours in 14 years, and April has 1,100 hours in 2 years. So very, very, very grateful for you both. And we have one last question that we have time for. And Terry, this was your question about how considerations are taken when you're thinking about the person who's going to be using the audiobook at the end, which are our students. And go ahead and ask your question, Terry.
So I was just wondering if you ever think about that student experience, because our students that are reading and listening to the books, they're developing readers. They haven't mastered oral reading fluency. And I can't tell you the importance of what it is when a student hears that in the right way, with the correct rate, with the correct inflection in the voice, the tone, all of those things. Like, I know you love books. I know you love doing this work, but have you ever thought about all of those nuances and aspects of what that student is experiencing?
Absolutely. Every single minute that we're recording, every single book. You're famous. I've seen you on the blogs. Absolutely. You know, for me, that's one of the reasons that I sit back and listen after I've done it. I want that book to I want that child to be sitting, every single one of them, and reading the words, but I want this to be a standalone performance. And I want it to be so engaging that every time they come into one of the books that I've done, that they come back and say, oh my God, aha, I love reading, and I can do this, and I want to.
Wow, what she said. I think it is best expressed in that we want to produce the very best product that we can. And that's certainly an aspect that we need to take into the creation, and know who our listener is, who's going to be using this product. That's a very good statement.
Bob and April, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of all of our hearts for coming and connecting with us today, and for giving us a peek inside your world. Like I said, this is the first time that we have ever done this, and I really, really hope that we can invite you back very, very soon for more questions and answers. And happy Volunteer Appreciation Week. We loved learning from you today. I know that we've all grown, and just thank you so, so very much.
Thank you. And thanks to all the educators that joined us for what you do every single day.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks for putting it together.
Thank you. Bye.